From meme to utility, Floki has it all. NFT metaverse game called Valhalla. Floki University, DeFi, charity, and shopping. Floki is governed by the people, for the people. Floki, together there is no stopping us.
The Credifi testnet is live, so head on over to demo.credifi.finance to see how you can effortlessly experiment with autonomous earning, NFT corporate bonds, Credi and X-Credi utilities, and Module X.
Good afternoon, everyone. VC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. It's just gone a couple of minutes past midday here, which makes it just gone 1100 UTC. A big shout out to everybody making the stream live today. Big hello to Suleiman K, first one in today, followed shortly by Nitpar and our good friend Gio. And obviously a big shout out to the rest of you as well. So today, obviously, we're going to take a little bit of a focus on crypto, as we do on our alt request Wednesday. Joshua Walker as well. Hello, mate, and welcome. So I can see our friend Suleiman K is in there early doors with some requests. So let's take a look at these, shall we? And we'll jump straight in. CTSI, Atom, and IOTX. Guys, if you've got any others you want us to rip through, then let's go and we can have a quick look. I just thought I would start very quickly. Gregory, hello, mate, and Williest as well. And Gregory in from Colorado. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Hello and welcome, everybody. So just kind of, I just want to zoom out to give you guys a little bit of context on this, just on my thoughts. So looking at this on a higher time frame basis, look, this is where it really pays to zoom out on the charts, in my opinion, anyway. I'm sure you've got more in reserve as well, mate. But look, corrections are healthy. The truth is, you know, you'll hear everybody say, look, it's correct and just buy the dip, buy the dip. Look, you have to do you. You have to follow your own kind of strategy here, or very much be part of a group of people to have some kind of understanding of where you are in the market, right? Because the market, you know, doesn't just go up all the time. Even in big expansions that we have here, the impulse moves like this, price more than often corrects down into some kind of fair value gap, right? Or testing into an order block, right? Or supply demand, however you kind of look at that. So the reason that I haven't been too bullish for several weeks now is because of this, right? If we look at what happened when price came into the previous all-time high, as it's done here, we can see we had this wick above, rejection. Okay, wick above again, rejection, and price came back in. See how we had this very small body close above it? I think that was kind of a bit of a trigger for people to really start to go long here. But I think, you know, if you'd waited for the weekly close, you notice that price had kind of come right back down, rejecting off of this high. If we just look at the similarities here, we can see the long upside wick that we got here. We got this small body close, although we kind of got two of them, probably, you know, making it even more encouraging for people to long above here. We didn't sweep this high, right? But what happened was this candle came up here, took out the high of 2 weeks prior, and then came back below this level, right? This level here for me, which on this one I traded Femex at 69k flat, which was the previous all-time high, is still a key level that price needs to get over for Bitcoin, all right? So we've been trading with the group, favoring shorts down to this weekly fair value gap. You know, we've had this nice reaction here, leaving this bullish hammer candle. But price kind of started looking a little bit heavy this week. We had a run up, took the liquidity above prior day's high, and we've now started to correct back lower. For me, you know, after price coming in and kind of marginally rebalancing this, I wouldn't really want to see price revisit this again. It might want to come kind of deeper down into this area, maybe to kind of around about the 50%. Right, we can see it didn't quite come in, but this is normally a sign of strength. You see some lows get taken out, price dip just marginally into a fair value gap, and then look how aggressively it got bought up. So really, we don't want to see price back down in here because it's showing weakness again, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't be in for another little flush there as well. Erica, hello, our dear Erica, and Raphael as well. Hello, mate, welcome. So just to give it a little bit more context on a daily scale, what can we be looking at? Well, considering what we've just been discussing, then, you know, we've dipped into this weekly high time frame level. We've taken out this low here. Price has had a nice recovery. What I really liked about this on the daily was the fact that we inverted this bearish FVG, creating a bullish FVG here, making this a balanced price range, right? This is the area I'm really looking at here, okay? So we had that on there previously. You know, we got that swept. which is fine. We've got more liquidity resting up here. But really, from a bullish perspective, exactly what we were looking for here was price to dive down into this and find a quick recovery above it, inverting this fair value gap. We got that here. We chased longs up to this high here. Now, showing a little bit of caution here, because this is a very normal place for price to get a corrective move lower. We'd like to see this hold here. Right, in which case we get this strong recovery. We turn an area that should have been resistance into support. We've got a beautiful bullish fair value gap here for the buyers to step back in, confirm this area as support and go higher. Start closing back below this here, and I fully expect price to come down and start testing these lows down there, which are about 56,697. All right, guys. So we're going to rip into some alts now and just kind of carry that through. We'll look at the high time frame, decant it down and look at it and move it down towards sort of a 4 hour and look at what kind of 15-minute setups we might be able to get off of those for people that are looking for those kind of shorter term swing trades. So let's take a look at this, shall we? CTSI for our friend Suleiman K. Craigie boy, hello mate. Great to have you on here as always. I hope work isn't interfering too much. Right, so weekly. What have we got here? We can see here on the weekly we're rejecting from this bearish fair value gap, all right? So like we said before, price very rarely just goes down in a straight line, although CTSI is trying to prove me wrong here. This is quite just quite a considerable drop. A cheeky hangover on a Wednesday, Craig. That is very, very British. I like that. So what have we got? Just going to draw up some key levels here. This is the first one, right? It's not confirmed yet, but it's the prior week's low. So let's draw that in. Okay, so prior week's low is resting below us. We obviously have the swing low resting in below that, and then we sort of, what we're looking at here is just a beautiful kind of liquidity pool, right? Down along here that we can see. All of that under there. Just all these untapped lows. There's not many inefficiencies in there, many gaps, right? Price is just coming in. And if we want to talk about areas of mitigation, then one of the things that we want to see, and obviously I know the bulls aren't going to be desperately impressed with this, but I would look at this as an area of mitigation, right? This is something that I learned on ICT's original mentorship many, many years ago. So full credit to Michael. But something that SZ really refined in me over the years, right? I learned so much from that guy. And looking at these areas that once were support, look, this is your order block, yeah? So, excuse me, price closes above this here, confirming this is the order block. So let's just draw that in very quickly here. Just do that as a thick black line for anybody wondering if you see it on my future charts. So price has come up close above this, confirming this is an order block. Now, this area would normally be blue on my chart, right? We can see it, price gets this initial reaction here. Look, similar to what we're kind of looking at Bitcoin now when it dropped into that FVG. We get this nice bullish hammer candle. I know it's a bearish candle, right? But that is a bullish candle. It's a pin bar with a short nose or a bullish hammer. But price couldn't sustain that. Right now, what we'll notice is that as we come back down into this area, we're not really seeing that, that buying pressure, right? You would want to see price touch into this and then really kind of start to move away, but it doesn't. What happens is we come back in and we form this fair value gap within this area. Now, what this does is this becomes an area of mitigation. That's meaning that if the buyers were here before, the cleanest way to think about this is if the buyers were here before, price has now come back down to that area and people are starting to buy again because they assume price is going higher. When it fails to show that strength, if we see these bearish gaps open up in these areas of mitigation, they're very, very good areas to get involved and look for continuation to the downside. An area that once provided strength or support will now most likely offer resistance. The good thing about this is that if we do have a bullish resurgence here and we get price close above, then the inversion of this fair value gap here, which you'll see in darker purple, would mean then that price is searching liquidity high. We have a very small fair value gap here, but this high here would be my kind of key target on a weekly scale. All right. So let's drop this down to the daily and see what we've got on the daily. Now we can see the reaction in here, right? We're going to look at this on a 4-hour as well. This would typically, if you were doing this analysis on a weekly, you would then look to drop down to a 4-hour chart next. But I want to give you guys the daily perspective as well, as we will still be looking at probably the hourly and definitely the 15-minute for some triggers and some setups, all right? But look at this. Got this area of mitigation. Price draws back up into this, okay? Sees an initial rejection here for price to come back down and take out liquidity below these lows. And then price tries a run on this again here, right? Just before it takes out these lows, right? Price comes up to here, is purging liquidity lower, takes a local low, but then rips up into here to wipe out any over leverage above here before ultimately coming back down and then continuing down into these lows, right? So on a daily scale, what are we looking for here? Well, if our belief or our assumption is that price is moving lower into here, what do we want to see? Well, we either want to see areas that should be acting as support turn to resistance, such as this. This should be or is a bullish fair value gap, right? So price drawing into here, bulls will want to see that hold. Now, remember, this is on a daily scale, right? So this candle here, don't just start shorting this, or if that was your system, I wouldn't just start shorting this yet because it hasn't closed. And we see very, very often when you get candles like this, it looks super, super bearish down to a point, but then it recovers fully before the close. If we hold this area, yeah, then that's a sign of strength, and we'd be looking at the next resting liquidity, which is above here. However, close below this, and then we've got a pretty nice free run down here to 0.1750, okay? So really, really clean and simple for me on the daily. Hold this, yeah, remain above it. I think we show some strength here, and we might move higher. Close below it, and then I think, you know, we start targeting these prior days low, but ultimately the swing low down here, which is also our weekly level. So moving this on to a 4-hour now. Guys, girls, please do let me know if you find these. So these vertical lines coming down the pane are just session breaks. You can put them on just by clicking into your settings on TradingView and session breaks, all right? Helps a little bit when you get down to lower time frames. I might leave them off just for clarity at the moment, just it makes the chart look a little bit muddied. Right, on the 4-hour scale, something that I absolutely love is low resistance liquidity, okay? Again, a concept that I learned originally from Michael on ICT's core mentorship. But, you know, a lot of these things are, you know, there's no silver bullets in trading, guys. Look, these are still just price action concepts. Why is this a good liquidity pool? Let me tell you. Untapped low, untapped low, untapped low. Oh, sorry, drew that one a bit far across. Okay, untapped low, untapped low. So often you'll see with price, right? What it does, it starts to build liquidity before it runs it. So this is a great example here. Untapped low, untapped low, untapped low, untapped low, untapped low. When that gets run, yeah, look how price then comes back down for a lot of this, yeah, before it finds its ultimate support and then runs up. And again, even when price starts to run up, what we're looking for are things like this, right? Beautiful, clean, equal highs, yeah? They don't have to be perfectly clean, you know? They'd be relatively clean, right? Or relative equal highs, meaning they're very, very close. So you can see with this one, it doesn't quite get there. But ultimately, what you want to see with these is you don't want to see this run this one because then liquidity's been taken. You want to see this as a failure swing, meaning there's liquidity resting there. Price often comes back to take that out, all right? So we can see as we built liquidity up here, price purged down and then had that nice bullish reaction. Ultimately, it couldn't sustain that, right? And then it got back to point. So let me just clear that up for a moment. But that's why I really like that. To a lesser extent, we can see we've got a lot of gaps in this move up, but we did have something similar here as well, right? Price came back down into here. I'll set this high, this one, right? Price got stopped at this, but we do have these gaps here as well, right? What you notice with this move down, there were less gaps beyond this one, right? And then price can just attack all of those lows. So at the moment, it looks like there's an attractive proposition for price down lower when it's coming down to grab liquidity. So we're just going to leave that on there for a minute. And we're going to say to ourselves, okay, remembering this is our daily level here. So in terms of using that on the time frame, we're looking at that for a daily close. What we do have here is a 4-hour close through this gap after price came down and took what we can see here. Just to test them out, we've got equal lows resting here, right? So these always seem like engineered liquidity pools, right? Price has purged this now, is coming back up. What we want to see here is price on a 4-hour scale. Because we've inverted this now, that's going to be purple. Price has closed below. We now want to see price retrace to this. And within here, we would be looking for, say, 15-minute setups based on something like market structure sweep. So you would want to see a higher set. You want to see that high swept. Yeah, and then the low that takes the high, yeah, closed below, and then you can look for retests and ultimately trade it lower. Okay, so that's the kind of pattern that we'd be looking for. You'd want to see a high swept here to induce liquidity, and then the low here that led to the sweep of the high, that's what you want to see broken. Right, then when you have that shift, you can look in here for, say, a fair value gap, or you can just look for this breakdown pattern in general to give you an indication that the market's ready to move. Okay, 1 second, let me just pause Discord for a minute. Forgot to do that, and it's just been going absolutely nuts in the background. Perfect. Okay, so all right, so how do we take that analysis and how do we then make it into actionable steps? If price is going to come down after this, then we want to see our setups, right? And a good way to do that is to move from your 4-hour to your 15 minutes. So if you're using a triple screen system with the weekly as your high time frame, you're moving to the 4-hour time frame to frame the trade, yeah? Meaning that the weekly gave us our bearish bias, the 4-hour we've used to identify the key level that we're looking to offer resistance, yeah? And now we're using the 15-minute to find a way to enter, all right? And that there can be a lot of different entry methods for you, right? One of the ones that I find most useful, right, and I'll just give you an example of one that we've had here, is you want to see price run liquidity, right? So if you're looking to get short in this market, then what you want to see is an initial move higher, yeah, so that price takes out some form of liquidity. We can see that we took out this high here. This one would have been better, but ultimately this one's fine. Then what you want to see is you want to see some structure breaks to the downside with displacement, right? So what does that look like? Now, it depends how you allow for your swing highs, swing lows, right? If you're looking at it from a traditional point of view, you have this, which also relative equal lows. So as you get the structure breakdown here, what do you want to see? Well, what you'll notice is you get a very similar, smaller pattern within here. You get a sweep, yeah? Then you're looking for the low that takes the high, yeah? Within that, I want to see two things. I used to call this a breaker line. I mean, I probably don't so much anymore because when I used to teach that, I used to get confusing with breaker blocks, but they are often the same thing. Here's the down close candles before the sweep on liquidity. That's your breaker. This line here is just a way that you want to see a strong close through it, yeah? You want to see price give you the indication that it's moving, ideally with some kind of gap. We have a little volume imbalance in here. And then what I would look to do is just once price closed below it, I would then put a limit order on there. I can put my stop loss here. Why can I put it there and not above the high? Well, because when price closed below this, it confirmed it as an order block, right? So that means now price shouldn't really be making a move on that high if we're correct and that price is looking to go lower. And then what you would be looking for are, you know, things like this, either equal lows on the higher time frame, or you know that you've got this down here, right? So you know that you're shorting this down. You know this could offer resistance, so you can look to adjust your risk here, meaning you can move your stop loss to entry, maybe trim a little bit of profit here. So with that in mind, we can now look over here at the same kind of idea, right? And we're saying to ourselves, well, we marked up our high time frame liquidity. We're not saying price is definitely coming here, right? But we're just applying the same principles. So if we look on here, we want to see a sweep. This is a really good sweep, right? Not saying the others are bad, but I'll tell you why this is better, because it's a high that resides within a fair value gap, right? Meaning that it provides a really good liquidity pool. So we can see, look at the rejection here. Prices couldn't close above this level, right? So that's good. It's good if we want to be short this market, right? Now, we have this, which is our low. And again, now you want to see more of it, but can you see how price is just starting to build liquidity here, 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 here? As somebody like myself that trades on a lower time frame, then as we move into New York soon, I'd certainly be looking at that getting run. But I don't, you know, I know a lot of people, and the reason I'm not sharing so much intraday stuff on these streams now is that I know it's not overly useful for most people. Most people can't sit in front of the charts like we do day in and day out, right? So with swing trades, you can set alerts, price can come up, and then, you know, you can get yourself to your point where you're like, okay, brilliant. I can take my time. I've got every candle that closes gives me at least 15 minutes. If I can get to the charts, brilliant. Now, if we get the close below here, yeah, this then becomes our breaker line. Right, so price would say close below here. Let me just signify that with this. Right, so we need to see a close below. Only when we get the close below, I'd put a limit order on here. Yeah, I can put my stop loss above here again, because once we close below this, it will set that as the order block. If you prefer, you can do it above the swing high. And then I'm looking left and saying, okay, well, where's price, where can price reject from? Obviously, we'd love to target this, like our weekly level down here, but we also want to be smart and look left and say, okay, well, you've got a key low there, but look, that's very, very close to price, probably a bit aggressive to move your stop loss here. Where what we do have over here is this really nice low sat within this gap, yeah? So if we look at that, and we move that across and we say, okay, well, what if we were to move our stop loss there to make our adjustment on risk in case we are wrong? 1.87R, very nice. We can trim a little bit of profit there, all right, and then leave a line share to run down to our lower target, okay? So that's certainly how I would be looking at that at the moment. Now, on this scale, obviously, if we move back to our 4 hour, if price comes back above this and closes above this, then my expectation is for price to make a move on these highs here about 0.2058. And then as we highlighted earlier, to come back up to there at 0.2110. Thank you, Solomon K. That's very, very kind of you, mate. So hopefully that shed a little bit of light on that one. Let's take a look at our friend Atom. Let's see what our expectations are here. So we've obviously run some analysis recently on Atom here. Yeah, okay, as we can see, very, very similar. So very similar, right? So basically, look, price ran down, held this weekly bullish FVG. We've already marked out our lower liquidity. Price has drawn back up into this. We're actually looking for this to draw back up towards the equilibrium here, all right? So that's just the 50% of this gap, all right? The gap between that candle's wick and that candle's wick. That's what forms these fair value gaps, right? So with that in mind, your price is kind of caught bouncing between this, which it can't close below, and this, which is kind of currently and has previously rejected price as well. So what we do now is, if it's not I wouldn't say that's not a clean read, but what you can then do is move to a lower time frame to say, okay, let's find something that's a little more granular. Now, this was obviously the level that we were looking for price to reach for. We've seen that we did get a strong close above this, right? So when you get something like that, it's always worth considering, because really, when you see lows sweat, just for an example, if we look at the low down here, see how price couldn't close below it. You just see these wicks. That shows absorption. That shows that price is getting bought up there. When you see a close like that, strong, yeah, it holds above it, then we get this move here as well. It gives me more indication that price might be ready to hold here. So then I'm saying, okay, well, what was key here? Well, this was key. Right, that was our inverted fair value gap, rejected there, strong close above it, and then look how once price closes above, it does this, and the body's almost respecting the top line of that perfectly. Wicks are just dipping in, pulling up for longs, and then ultimately just attacking the next key liquidity pool, which was this one just after this local one was set as well. So at the moment, it's very, very hard to be bearish here on Atom on a daily basis, because we're currently holding this bullish fair value gap, all right? Do that in a slightly darker and just label it up for you guys as well so it's clear. So fair value gap daily. Remember, the large one we're above here is weekly. So while we're within this, yeah, it might seem a little bit crazy to long it, but at the same time, what we've done is we've come up into this weekly gap, right? We've rebalanced it a small amount, but doesn't mean that we can't then look to long here. This is just such a large high time frame weekly gap. If this is going to reject price, I wouldn't expect to be getting long setups in here. I'd expect for price to be purging down a little bit lower. So our line in the sand here is a close below this, yeah, which was our inverted fair value gap, a close back below this, and my expectation is for price to reach down for these relative equal lows down here. Let me just change that. I've written that as equal highs mistakenly. So our equal lows that are here, I think that's going to provide a really nice draw on price. Yeah, but at the moment, it's very tricky to short this because we're in this bullish gap. So let's take a look at it on the 4 hour as well. You see price kind of making its moves down here. But actually what it does is gives us a really, really good plan, all right? Because what we can see here, same principle, we've got a bearish gap here on the 4 hour, right? So now we've got this bearish and we can see how that's rejecting price, pushing it lower. Again, difficult because we've got these big gaps down here. We don't really know where price might react and kind of look to go back to the upside. So while we're rejecting from a bearish gap on this time frame, the chances are that we're heading lower. One thing that we have done as well is we've just put this order block in. All right, let me do that in a lighter color. Actually, I'll do that in blue just so it stands out a little bit better. Right, so we put that order block in, meaning that price is now, more likely, in my opinion, especially looking at these upside wicks here, looking to purge a little bit lower. So I'm just flicking on here for a moment to just take a look to see we've got a strong dollar index today as well. And we also have weakness in equity markets. That's showing that there's a little bit more of a push towards a risk-off environment in traditional markets. And that normally translates to the same for crypto, right? So it could be a good point to catch a corrective move. However, in here, there's a really clear and obvious play that I see, which is if price comes and closes above this, on a 4 hour basis, remember, then I am absolutely in love with all of the liquidity resting here. So, for example, if we get the close above here, we'd look for this kind of pattern again for a liquidity sweep on the lower time frame. And then, we would be looking to get involved here for longs. Yeah, longing into this area up here. It's a very, very difficult thing to short this at the moment, okay? Because, yes, we're reacting from a bearish FVG. For me, I don't really have a clear idea on where this is going. This FVG here could support price. This FVG here could support price. The best kind of moves that you have are when you get liquidity resting, like we said before, like your low resistance, yeah? There's not great examples on here, and crypto can be a little bit more volatile, especially the lower the cap. But actually, just to go back to the end of April when we did our analysis here, we can see that we got this inverted fair value gap here, which created this bullish fair value gap within it. That was our springboard to push price higher, all right, like we looked at on the higher time frames as well. So you just take these principles and move them down onto the lower time frames. What I do like is if price starts closing below here, then there's not really much down here that can reject price, right? Price often balances these fair value or rebalances these fair value gaps and then uses them for continuation. If we close below them, they're a sign of weakness, right? But once we get below these gaps, look, untapped low, right? Which has kind of rebalanced this gap here already. Untapped low, untapped low. So we can see if price really does start coming back and flirting with this area in a bearish nature again, we could really see how price can attack those lows. All right. So that's what I'd be looking for at the minute. I don't really have any trigger mechanisms for this one here because I wouldn't want to short this down here into these lows. What I would just like to see is this area hold. But ultimately this here on the daily is my line in the sand here. I want to see this area hold and then look for longs. If we close below it, then I think we flush out these lows on Atom. IOTX, wasn't it? I believe was the next one. Oh, if I click the right one. There we go. Awesome. Jersey Girl Trader, you're very, very welcome. And I absolutely love Jersey. Went there for the first time a couple of months ago. Stayed at Le Horizon. I can't like the worst French accent, look, because they kept telling me off because of being painfully British. I always say Le Horizon, but it's not. It's Le Horizon, which was a beautiful hotel right down in the bay. We went to St. Brellard's Bay. Just honestly, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not going to lie to you. You need 50 million now to be considered for a residence visa. And I can tell you this, I am saving and investing incredibly hard for that. What a beautiful place. Either that or you're from Jersey in the United States, which I haven't been to, but certainly would never dream of speaking ill of. Right, so let's have a look at this on a weekly scale. Now, weekly is quite interesting because we can see we're still holding this bullish gap, right? We did rebalance this all the way down to here, so I'm now not expecting this area really to provide any kind of support on its own. I'd actually be looking for these lows would be the key thing I'd be looking for here. Because we've rebalanced that. We've come in, found support once here, which led to a beautiful move to the upside to take liquidity from the highs. Price has now purged back down into this. I think it's the last part of this fair value gap that remained unbalanced that has helped, but certainly sweeping this low is what's kind of catalyzed that reaction. Now we need to look where we're delivering from, and price has most recently delivered from this bearish gap here. Hello, Simon, mate. Sorry, I didn't see you slip in there. How the devil are you? So you see that purged out, taking liquidity from the lows. What do? Revisit a fair value gap. You'll notice this pattern happens quite a lot, right? What do? Take a higher external liquidity. What happens? Price comes back down after taking that to rebalance a gap. Goes from the gap. What does it then do? Moves up to take a high, which it does here. So we get a corrective move low. We don't have a gap here, but we do have this order block, which is roughly about 50% of that move. All right. So that's the kind of dynamic that we're looking for, external to internal liquidity until that fails, right? Now with this one, we've taken external from the lows, come to internal here. So the full expectation is that we're now coming back down for this level, which is 0.04425. All right, that's the really kind of key area that I'm looking for. And to be honest here with IOTX, this thing looks like it's dropping pretty aggressively. All right, we had a little bit of a false move here from price, which was very cheeky. So you know, anybody that knows the show for the last few years knows I'm a big fan of inversion fair value gaps. When we got this inversion here, right, and we actually made this a balanced price range here as well because of this fair value gap, I really expected this area to hold. Yeah. Of course we can, Erica. Yeah, no problem. Take a look at Sol. Right, I really expect this area. As soon as we close below this here, I'm like, okay. And I'm not trading this, right? Full disclosure, but I'm gutted that I'm not. There's just so many crypto pairs to keep an eye on, isn't there? Especially like myself when you trade traditional markets as well. Just a quick sip of tea. We got this low here, right? So expectation was that we've violated this again and we've closed below. In doing this, we've completely violated the balanced price range, and we've also inverted this bullish fair value gap. As soon as that closed there, expectation is for that low to be taken. Then these equal lows here, or relative equal lows, which will draw in a bit of creative license. They're not crazy equal, but they're certainly close enough for me. But this is my real drawdown here. If we don't see a strong reaction here and start to recover, then I think price is in trouble. What this does give us a good opportunity to do, though, is look at the charts and show how you would, what I would call chase price, okay? So it's not something you want to get in the habit of doing, but sometimes if you're in a strong run, just, sorry, little nod. I can't help myself with these things, but look at this again. How we had this low resistance liquidity here, right? See how they become just such key areas to attack. Liquidity builds here, and then bang, price comes after it, all right? The same thing as we were building up liquidity here. Yes, we had this little gap, but look at this is the same. Untapped high, untapped high, untapped high, untapped high. What happens? We break structure. Yeah, shift structure here after sweeping liquidity below equal lows. What does price do? Returns to this gap, and then boom, up it goes. All right. So when you're looking at price, look at the dynamic of how price is set. Okay, where liquidity is resting, where it's most likely to attack. For me, it's just far too late to short this move now. Unfortunately, we wouldn't have even really got a great opportunity. This was a play for yesterday, right? Because we'd already closed below. Then what did we do? We set these order blocks, right? So this is really key for me. Again, what are we looking for here? Areas of mitigation, yeah? So on the way up here, what was this? That was our bullish order block. Right? I'm going to draw this across a little bit further just to really make it prominent. So this was our bullish order block. And I'm going to get rid of this from the higher time frame and just kind of focus on this here because we know we're below these, right? Or in fact, what I will do is get rid of this one here. Right, so look, this is resistance now. We've closed back below it. This should be strong resistance. This order block here, look what happened. Price dipped into it here, found a nice amount of strength to get back up, but ultimately failed. Now, remember what I said, this area that once provided really strong support, where the bulls are looking to reload, when that area fails, what are people going to do? They're going to cover their positions. They're going to flip their bias to either cover their losses or their stop loss is going to get taken, flood the market with orders that can get bought up. In this instance, what did we say we want to see? We said within these areas that used to be bullish, we want to see bearish arrays, meaning fair value gaps or order blocks, right? So we had that here and we had our change in state of delivery as well. So looking at that, what did this area give us? This area gave us prime opportunities within here. And I know this is looking back to yesterday because we've missed the move for price to come down and attack the low resistance liquidity. What's it done? It had a drop. It's now consolidating in an area that previously offered support. Yeah. Now we're looking for weakness. So what we would do is we would now drop down into here. right? And we just look within our sessions here. Here's our day. You know, I personally like trading from New York on. I do like trading equity, Forex markets in London. I don't get as much time as I used to, unfortunately, anymore. But remember what we said, right? You want to see that move of manipulation. Has price taken out a high there? No, it hasn't, right? What's price done here? And this is a great move because price has actually taken the lows here, right? Encouraging people to go long, only for price to come up here, and it's taken this high as well, but also this high, sweep this high, yeah? And then what do we look for? Remember, within this area, yeah, you can look for the same kind of move again. You want to see displacement. I mean, you want to just see that big move. Is that displacement? No. Does it take out a low? No, it doesn't. But it does set this low. Yeah. And then what we get from in here is we get price run down. Look at the displacement in this move, right? Look how quickly price moves to the downside. Yes, we take liquidity from the low, right, making it a little bit more of a dangerous entry here. But what we can do is say to ourselves, all right, well, if we've set this low, again, not so often, not a coincidence that you see these as equal lows or equal highs, but we set these equal lows here. Remember what I said, looking for the same pattern, right? Look for price to come up and sweep a higher, then look for the low that led to the sweep of the high. That actually happens to be the equal lows as well. That turns into our breaker line. Yeah. What happened here? Price closed below, so we set our limit order on the breaker line. It came back and tagged us in shortly afterwards. Stop loss above the order block, or in this case, which is the high as well. And then look, we've got our downside target. Again, I'm not saying you would have held all the way for this one or all the way for this one, but that's why we leave runners, right? Look, what you would do is you'd be looking left at these lows and that to find a sensible place that you can move your stop loss up and mitigate your risk. Because if you're wrong, price comes back and takes your stop loss, you've covered yourself for your fees here, and you're nice and clear, ready to get on, right? But if not, and you've left a good, let's say you've left even 20, 30% of the trade open, you know, by this point, if it reaches this liquidity, and I'd be very surprised if it didn't, then you're looking at 7.4R, right? Let's not forget that actually our high time frame target's down here as well, which is at 15R. So let's imagine that you've got 20% of the trade left, right? With your stop loss at entry. Well, that's like an extra 3R that you've booked just from that little bit that's gone down to there. Plus you've booked a good bit of profit in there as well. So I hope that wasn't too waffly and rambly, guys. I know I can end up kind of going off on one a little bit. You know, have a sip of tea, and then we're going to look at Sol. We do also have time to look at one or two others if anybody is interested. It's going to take about another 10 minutes or so. So let's take a look at this. By the way, guys, if you are interested in coming and trading with me over at Femex, we've got a brilliant community that we're building over there with TBN in Femex Pulse. Really, really exciting things going on there where you can basically get live trade updates every day. You get all of our TA, you get exclusive insights and analysis. What we love about Femex as well is that just by participating, just by asking questions and engaging with the community, you get free Pulse points, right? So you can go on there, build up all these points, and then you can just transfer them into USDT and just trade with it. But it's immense. Honestly, I really, really mean it. Look, you know, at TBN, we're partnered with Bybit, Binance as well, right? Because different exchanges have different legalities, work better in different countries. For me, for example, you know, I'm very, very heavily with Femex, work perfectly in the UK. You know, they meet the regulators' demands and bits and pieces to allow them to operate. But do come and check us out. All the memberships you've got at TBN start from free as well, guys. So it's not that we're just out to get your money. We're just trying to build a very good community of traders. We've got about 50,000 active on Discord at the moment. You can find all that in the description, right? That's all I'm going to ping to you today. Just, you know, be aware of it if you do want to come and get involved with this. But with Femex, do let me know. I'm sure there's a link in the description. If there's not, hit me up. Just get some amazing bonuses. And genuinely, everybody that's on it at the moment is making money just by going on, asking questions, sharing a chart, trading on there, you know, getting involved in some of the giveaways, the airdrops. Like they're giving away a lot at the moment. So always free money is good. So let's take a look here at Solana. We're going to start on our weekly. Williest, mate, how are you? Interested in W2. What's that, Simon? Let me know, mate. In W. Let me know what that is, mate. We can definitely let's finish. We'll do Sol, RNDR, and then whatever that one is there that you're interested in, Simon. Yes, Simon, love Jersey as well. Great place. And no, I haven't stayed at Sheraton actually. I think really had a great time over there though. All right, full disclosure. Let's see what our thoughts were over here, shall we? Before we get rid of this. I hate it when you see OTA on people's sites and then they just get rid of it before you even see. Oh God, this must have been a good short from there. Should have held that, shouldn't we? Arc extractor shift. Hang on. I won't bore you all with it too much, but okay, it didn't work out, did it? So we got that. We moved stops to entry there. Basically, that would have been a 5-minute swing low. We booked maybe. I think we might have taken this with Trade Club actually. Maybe down to there, but yeah, I will always save the old data anyway. It can't hurt. When was it from? April. Just in case we want to review that. Okay, so let's zoom back out to the weekly. Let's get ourselves a nice clean chart and see exactly where we are. So here we go. Right, so we're not reacting from any obvious gap here. The last gap that we had here on the weekly was this, which is now very much offering resistance as we would expect once we close below it, right? Target would have been this, and still is that, right? I think on a weekly scale, as we look at that, that looks super clean. There's definitely been some buying pressure from down here, though, right? There's this kind of larger order block here, right, which we've got. Now, I'm not including that one so much because it's within the range of this one, right? So this kind of whole area here, price just literally tickled that look and then just absolutely flew. So at the moment, we have created this new swing low, which we have to kind of allow for as a target as well. Price closing below here, setting such a prominent wick, what I would call an abnormal wick. You always want to look at these and how price reacts to them. Either that or wicks at key swing highs like this, for example, because they very often provide us really good areas to look for support and resistance. Yeah, resistance, price closed above, treated as support, found support again, it's now found support again. No doubt in my mind at all that that's a level that's worthy of note. All right, so I'm just going to label that up as SRW for our support resistance weekly. All right, just think that that's a key area of interest, right? So if we drop down now to our daily, wormhole, yeah, sure. Is that, what's the ticker for that, mate? I've not even looked at that. Is it just W? It'd be amazing if they just got W as the ticker. But again, look, you know, when you decant this down, you look at the weekly level, you can see the close above. Look, I know the price came back down here. We had this long wick down, but it came down to rebalance this fair value gap here. This very small one here got bought up so aggressively. And then look, as I've kind of been rattling on about, what do we want to see? A nice purge on liquidity. Did we get it yet? Because we swept that low. It is just W, is it? Brilliant. How detached I can be with crypto sometimes, right? And then, like I said about these wicks, right? Look at this big wick. See, this here is like a news day wick. Wipes out liquidity from the high, takes liquidity from the low. But then ultimately, when we break structure here, or not structure breaks, it's actually a structure shift, right? Look what happens. Price gets above it, support, finds buyers within the bullish fair value gap, which is here, right? And then we get that nice continuation higher. So as we're looking at this back here, what we're saying to ourselves is, where are we currently reacting from? And we're currently reacting from and holding this bearish gap on the daily. Okay. So that's where we are at the moment. And while we're respecting that, we have to respect Hardy Radio. Hello, mate. That's fine. Do you know what? Great to have you on. And it is recorded, mate. So you can go on the Birdnest YouTube, go onto the live shows, and you can watch it back, I think, within a few minutes of this going on there. If you've got any questions, you can always reach out to us, bud. So we're reacting from this higher time frame level. We expect this to be strong resistance up here, okay? What I will note on here is that we've kind of, with price's immediate rejection here, we've kind of left these equal highs up here, relative equal highs. Always worth noting then, whenever you get these failure swings, price often likes to come back and take that liquidity. Excuse me. So while we're rejecting from here on a daily scale, it's very hard not to be bearish. However, we don't want to ignore structure here either, right? If we look at this price leg from the low to the high, a couple of areas I'm interested in here. We've got the golden pocket down here, so that can be a good target. We also have this very skinny FVG in here as well. Price could be looking to kind of dip down, wick down into this, hold this gap, yeah, and then move higher. So let's just draw this gap in just to the end of our fibs, right? And now we're going to move to our 4 hour and say, okay, well, how does this look? Well, for me, I think the most obvious place for price to find a reaction, I think if it reacts at this low, price action is probably going to be a bit more bullish than we expect. This low here as well. What I do really like is I like this area here, because the other thing that we can see from this is that this area offered a nice support and resistance flip, right? So you can see this high here when it came across, that area, resistance, close through, use it as support, and then starts to move higher, okay? So this area here, I think, is what's kind of drawing price. The difficulty that we have in terms of shorting it down to this is we don't really have much to go by, right? We would be looking at this bearish order block here, which has just been confirmed on the previous candle. We have this immediate low here where prices again left equal lows. You know, it might not by the time that this candle closes, right? We've got another 12 minutes or so, but if it does, what I'd love to see here as a play is price draw up into here, give us our low time frame short setup, and then come back down to attack this liquidity and possibly even deeper into here. Typically, we like to see these 50% retracements. So this is our 50% line, right? Remember, this kind of area here is the golden pocket. So we'll label that up here, and we'll do that big, well, a yellow that we can see anyway for sure. Right, that's to signify the golden pocket, because we're now going to change this into our premium and discount range. And what this does is it helps give us the context of the low to the high of this dealing range, right, is where we would be looking for price to correct to. So we've got the golden pocket down there. Then we look across and say, have we got any other confluence? Where else could price be drawing to down here? And then we notice that this lines up with it almost perfectly, right? This bullish gap. Bullish fair value gap. What a nice way. This would be a clean way for price to come back down into an area that then favors long setups. Ultimately, what we'd be looking for down here is something like this, yeah, for price to run a low, recover structure, and then start making an attack on the high, allowing us to look for long setups in the lower 50% of this range, which from a risk to reward perspective gives us the best chance of aligning ourselves with institutional order flow. Again, if you're looking at things like premium discount ranges, like I said earlier, I always recommend you go to the source of the material. I use them in the way I use them. Michael, who's known as ICT on Twitter, you know, was the person that I learned that from many, many years ago on his original mentorship. And obviously it's been refined through a lot of other teachers over the years and that as well. But, you know, always give a nod to the people that you learn from, I think, just out of respect. So that's where I am with Sol. So I hope that's been helpful, Erica. I think at the moment we're kind of looking for this. I think if we close back above this, by the way, yeah, start violating this bearish order block here, then price could make a move back to these equal highs. And then, you know, again, if we start to get back underneath these quite quickly, I'd expect price to be purging a bit lower. Right, so two more really quickly. RNDR. Here we go. Let's have a look. So that's about 45. Okay, weekly scale. What's RNDR doing? Okay, a little bit similar. This hasn't been that clean. Show you as for why that was inverted. Okay, so we can see price came down, closed below this here. What's my expectation there? Well, ultimately the price was coming down to at least take out that low. We can see it did not want to do that. Came back above, hasn't closed back above this yet, but the fact it's climbed back within it is certainly a sign of strength from price. So I don't really have too much more on that. In fact, should have acted to the support here, and it did as price got bought up, closed below, so shows weakness. It's now kind of been violated again, so not really paying too much attention to that. Once I think it's had its third violation, I think basically as an area it kind of has run its course. So now looking on the daily, however, what I try and do is always ask myself the first thing that price has most recently done, right? So price has come and run this high, yeah? So now taking out a key liquidity, remember this is a high within a fair value gap here. Look at the run up that price has had here. If we're looking at this in terms of premium and discount, right? Then it'd be really nice for price to get a corrective move down to here. Absolutely doesn't have to, though. And we were discussing this, funny enough, yesterday with Trade Club, which is our live trading show at the Bird Nest. And we were saying exactly the same thing about the NASDAQ, and we got a really nice long setup from the higher of the two FVGs. The key is, look, we're looking for what we would ideally like to see price do. It doesn't mean that it has to do it. So that's why we're always equipped to trade both ways, right? And I think that, well, I don't include myself in this, but I think if you look at the great price action traders over the years, and a lot of people I've studied, either been fortunate enough to study under or study directly, will always tell you the same. You're never getting married to a bias. You're always looking for what price can do in a situation. You're looking for key areas to target, right? So for me here, as mad as this is, because price is so bullish here, we've swept this key high. Unless I get a really good low time frame setup to go long here, I'm favoring price drawing back down here, especially, or at least, sorry, to the very first FVG that we can just see below. So let's make this a slightly less obtrusive range. Yeah, so we know this is our midline here. Let's lock that up and let's get ourselves onto the 4 hour. Now on the 4 hour, we can see price is kind of obliging at the moment. It's starting to make its move down a little bit lower. It's not really leaving any inefficiencies for us here, but we have had a change in state of delivery here, okay? Setting this order block. And actually what I do like about this is we had a very skinny FVG here that we've violated as well, or inverted. So that means that if price is moving lower, how nicely does that level line up? Yeah, with the top of our bearish gap. Now we can look in here and say, okay, what else do we have in here? Okay, so we have a lower time frame, an H4 gap as well, that can be drawing price lower. So if we start seeing some reactions from here with a reason to short, we can short into this. Now we need to remember that price action on the higher time frame and even on the 4 hour is still bullish, right? So these would be counter trend trades, not to teach you how to suck eggs, which is a brilliant and mad English saying. I don't know if anybody else has that saying in their country, but it basically means, look, I'm not trying to baby you here. I keep repeating the same things because they're very important lessons that I learned over the years. But I just want to keep repeating it just so that you see the significance of it. When price had this reversal here, what did it do? And what are we always talking about? Price sweeping a key low, yeah, as we saw here. Price sees, you see the liquidity here, right? Look, this FVG, which is why I love inverse fair value gaps, gives us the opportunity when we close above it here to get onto the charts, look for long setups, which we get here. And again, what do we say we really love to see? We see this structure break here. Yeah, we see it with displacement because we've left a bullish FVG here. And what does price tag literally to the dollar? That bullish gap, right? Price comes back, purges liquidity. This should act as resistance. Does initially, then closes above. As soon as that happens, we then get ourselves to the chart. We do two really key things here, right? That, bang, order block is set. Look how significant that plays here. All right, close above it. Next candle causes this gap. You're a buyer here, you're a buyer here, and you're absolutely away. And then what are you doing? You're targeting all these beautiful untapped swing highs. All right. So I know that's a thing on the history, and people are like, yeah, looking at charts, blah, blah, blah. What can we do today? Long Bitcoin, etc. Not saying anybody's saying that in the chat at the moment, but we normally get that. It's important to look back over this and how price reacts and how price moves, because you can then look at it again. You've got to say to yourself, well, where's price going to reject here? Yeah, we've got this little order block here, but liquidity is resting below lows and highs, right? So if we're going to be short here, that's where we want to look to short into. So looking at this here, how would I look to play this, right? Well, quite simply, we can see price building this up now. We can already see two things here that I really like. One, that we've swept some form of liquidity here. Two, that we understand where our low is, right? The low that led to the sweep. So we can see that here. Next thing that we've got here that I really like that can add some confidence is we've got this bullish fair value gap. So if we see price do something like this, really carve through this, what's it doing? Swept liquidity, yeah, shifted structure, violated a bullish gap, meaning that we're then looking for that to offer resistance. And it gives us the opportunity to short down into these levels here, all right? While this holds as support, you know, price has to be respected as moving a little bit higher. Once we start to violate these, price is kind of telling you that it's getting ready to move for liquidity targets and lower down. So Good Lord, there is a... I'm hoping it's this one, by the way, guys, is it? WSDTP. Have a look at this for Wormhole for Simon. And then, do you know what, Raf? Because you asked so nicely, Zorski is showing everything. Your thoughts? I don't know, mate. I don't really pay much attention to other analysts. That's not an arrogance thing. I think it's something that you learn really quickly that, this guy might have a completely different system or read on the market than I do. I don't like to be critical of other analysts unless I think that they're shysters or shillers, in which case I'm happy to call them out because there's no reason to be in this industry. It loses so much professionalism from the really good people that are in this space. But unfortunately, I'm not aware of his or her stuff. What I would say is find a reason as to why. Yeah. So let's say, for example, we look at this one now and we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, I don't really have the data to do a weekly on here, right? But on the daily, why would you be bearish here? All right. And what would you need to be bullish? I think that's always a good way to look at this. So we've got this fair value gap here that is completely controlling price at the moment. For me to be, I'm not sure either, but it sounds quite Polish, actually. I like a lot of the Eastern European analysts and stuff like that as well. Not many analysts I don't like, really. I just, for the sake of my own sanity, I just always try and listen to myself. And at the end of the day, it's my decision. It's my money. So, we'll give it a go. But look, we're within this gap, right? So for me, while we're in here, I'm saying, okay, well, if we're still rejecting here, where's the next point of liquidity on a daily scale? So I'm just looking for lows and highs. I've got these relative equal lows down here, which I love. So equal lows down there, I think that can go. And then we've got here, then we've got here, right? We've got all these liquidity targets. Again, the sucking eggs comment comes out, right? We can see liquidity building to the lows here. I can understand how somebody would have a short bias. We've come in and swept a key high because that's the high that was in the fair value gap. And we've had this initial move lower, right? So we've got clean liquidity targets down here, but, price was starting to get back into kind of a bullish form. And even on a daily basis here, depends how you treat your highs and lows, right? But for me, looking at just, a high is flanked by two lower highs, and a low is flanked by two higher lows. So that's a low, that's a high, that's a low, that's a high, that's a low, that's a high. It's just started to get in there. Yeah, exactly, Nick. Whoever sucked an egg? I don't know where that saying comes from. If anyone can ever enlighten me, I'm absolutely all ears. Anytime someone says about sucking an egg, I just think of the film Cool Runnings. Just amazing film if you haven't seen it, about Jamaican bobsled team with the legendary John Candy in it. Anyway, before I digress, so we're still in this area, we're still being forced down here, in my opinion, although structure started to regain some bullishness. So if we look for something a little bit more granular, yeah, we can see how price had this strong move here. I think this was a really key thing here on a 4-hour scale, is when we closed below this. Right, we got the close below this. Look how price then retested this, and then price is ultimately flushing out liquidity lower. I still really like these equal lows here as a target. I think, where we're looking at where price is delivering from, again, we've got this bearish gap. Yeah. So for me, this is really, really simple, actually. I think we get a 4-hour close above this, then I'm targeting intraday plays into this level here, which is at 0.7070. And then I'd be looking at this point for a confirmation rejection. Yeah. So what does that look like? So obviously imagine this on a lower time frame. We get the close above. I would want to see price sweep a low. Yeah, get that. And then I'd be attacking it into here, which would be the bullish mode. But then once we got up into here, I'd be very aware of this high, right? And also this gap. And if we saw a move like this, so we get price come up and sweep this higher, break down below, yeah, and then return, then ultimately I'll be looking for it to trade to there and then to our equal lows down here. All right, that for me would be the kind of cleanest setups that we would be looking at here. I wouldn't be looking at anything on a lower time frame than this at the moment either. I think the 4 hours quite nice and clean. I think that we've swept a low here. If the bullish momentum is here, we get back above this. If you are going to take lower time frame trades and look for shorts, then this is the area. But do make sure you're looking for those key kind of breakdown patterns, or that you've got a trigger system that you really understand and trust. We can see also we had those equal lows that were swept there, right? That also led to a catalyst for the market to move higher, but we're still being rejected at this 4-hour FVG. Awesome. I think that's it, guys. We finished literally with 1 minute over, which was good because I was a minute late to the stream anyway. So we've got that nailed on 60 minutes. I hope that's been useful for you guys. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can get to me on Twitter at BC_Richfield. I'm an analyst over at the Bird Nest, where I work with an amazing trading team. I'm live here on a Monday and a Wednesday. All of that is free. We do live trading sessions at the Nest as well. We have memberships that you can join for free. You can get in on free trials. You can join exchanges with our referral link, meaning that the exchanges basically pay our fee for you to join, and you get free membership. So do come and check it out. Bull markets, bear markets, whatever the conditions, it's always worth investing in your education. All right, guys. There's so many of you. So all 2,500. It's been absolutely brilliant having you all on here. Huge shout outs to all of you legends. It's been brilliant to see some new faces as well as some of the old faces who've stuck with me for a long time. Do trade safe out there. One more quick thing to look at before we close up for the day. 8th of May today, just looking at the economic calendar. We do have an FOMC Seeker Jefferson at 4 p.m. today. All right, we've got crude oil inventories as well, but these are like yellow folder news. Right, we've got a bond auction down there at 6:01. Okay, and then that's the wrap for me. We've got no red folder news to be aware of, but we've got, I know there's not a lot of FX traders on here, but if you are, then be aware tomorrow we've got some red folder news for the Bank of England. All right, guys, wishing you all a fantastic week ahead. Do trade safe. And I look forward to seeing you all either next week or around the Nest. All right, guys, have a fantastic week.